Okay, Liju.
Good evening, everyone. Like Deepu introduced, I'm Liju. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Perfomatix Solutions. First of all, can you guys hear me? They're back. Can you hear me? All right, good. So thanks, Deepu, for the invite. Last week, I met Deepu. I think 3 weeks back, right? So he threw out this idea. Why don't we do an AngularJS talk? And I was more than happy to do this. Thanks for the invite. So let me start. But I just want to see, hands up on guys who have some idea about JavaScript. So just show me hands of guys who know JavaScript at least. Okay. Now, how many of you have worked on AngularJS? At least some idea on AngularJS. Okay. So I think we have an even spread. Fine. So first of all, this is the largest crowd I'm addressing. So it'll take little time for me to get used to this. Right. So the way I want to take this session is I would want to have a very light session. The subject is a little dry. We are going to get into details of AngularJS, a little bit of coding. So hang on. It's going to be a little dry. So I'll try to make it as light and funny as possible. Right. And like what Deepu said, please interact at any point in time. There is no separate Q&A session. At any point, if you want to jump in, feel free to jump in. Right. Good. So yeah. So starting with a little bit about the company. So we are Perfomatix. I'm from Perfomatix Solutions. We are at Gayatri building, 3rd floor, right? Like I said, none of my developers were harmed during the process of creating this presentation, but I think a couple of guys, Hari is here. I think he's been bothered. So, and I'll make sure that none of you guys will be harmed, at least during the subsequent session of process, right? All right. So what am I trying to cover here today? So I just want to set the expectation for this talk, right? You can have a technology talk about in-depth analysis of certain things, or I want to set the expectation what I want the listeners to take away after this 1 hour or couple of hours of talk, right? To extend on what Deepu just said, why JavaScript is still relevant, right? I'll maybe add a few more points to what Deepu said. Now, what are the things one should know before taking the journey into AngularJS, right? What you should, at the bare minimum things you should know before you try to learn AngularJS. Now, again, the meat of the thing, what is AngularJS? That's the main thing what I want to cover. And then we'll get into the core concepts of AngularJS. And that's where I'll try to do some demo in JS Fiddle. There are a few things I will try to show here. And this is one question I get asked a lot of time, when to use AngularJS. So is this AngularJS that one size fits all framework, or does it work for all solutions? So it's one question I get asked a lot, and I try to answer it here, right? Then, so what next after this talk? If somebody here, a group of people, or somebody who wants to take the next step into AngularJS, where should I start? How should I do it, right? So that is something. And the last, I will show a demo of one of the apps we developed for one of our customers and one of the products we have. And I'll show you some code, how a large scale application is developed. So my journey with AngularJS started 2 years back. Before I started the company, I was with Infosys and TCS for over 10 years time. And during that time, so the last I worked with Infosys Trivandrum. So before I moved out, I was a solutions architect there. And I was evaluating a couple of frameworks, and I had to come out with I was just trying to figure out what frameworks fit for one of the solutions. So that's when I started with AngularJS. And ever since I embraced AngularJS, I really liked it. Maybe because of the struggles I had to go through developing a web application over the last 10 years of my career. Because most of the time, the kind of applications and technology I worked in are Java-based applications, JSPs and struts, all web applications, yes, and a bunch of API-related things. All right. So before any delay, why don't we start with this presentation? All right. So what to expect from this talk? Right. So I'll just what I want to after this talk, if you go to your office back and your manager says, "Hey, why don't you try something with AngularJS?" I want you guys to say, "Hey, come on, bring it on. We will do it. Right? I can do it." That is what I'm trying to do. I'll try my level best to get you guys that knowledge, or at least the core concepts of what AngularJS is. This is my intention here. I want to set the expectation here. AngularJS cannot be taught in 2 hours. It's not possible, right? Because like I just happen to notice that few people know JavaScript, few people doesn't know JavaScript. So people who don't know JavaScript is going to be a little hard to teach. So I'm not going into the depth of AngularJS. There are certain concepts in AngularJS which might take a session on its own. Things like directives or understanding services. So there are certain things which you need a separate session on its own, right? So I'll walk you through all the different aspects of AngularJS, right? So hopefully, by end of the session, I'll ask you whether my expectation, I could meet the expectation. So that's going to be the validation of my talk here. Okay, so why JavaScript is relevant now, right? So see, I think a lot of things Deepu just mentioned how the journey of JavaScript. I'll tell you what happened with me. I started 10 years back, and when I was doing JavaScript, the one thing I really told myself, right? I was into Java application development prominently, and I told myself I'll never learn JavaScript. JavaScript for me, JavaScript was what? A second-class citizen. The JavaScripts are for UI developers, not for developers. I'm not going to do it. The only reason I was doing was what? Email validation, phone number validations, and things like that. You remember anyone like doing just using JavaScript just for those sort of validations, right? That's what 10 years back. Now see what I'm doing today. I'm taking a session on JavaScript. So what happened in the last 10 years, right? Even personally, what changed? So this is a question I asked myself when I was preparing for this. What happened over the 10 years where I'm standing here and talking about JavaScript, and I'm running a company which predominantly does stuff in AngularJS and similar technologies. So what was the change? Anyone here? Can someone tell what? There are a few things that happened. So I think I mentioned it here. So I think one of the main things that happened over this time was Ajax. See, Ajax, I don't know if Ajax get the credit it did, right? So how many of you don't know Ajax? Okay, I think, okay, so for those who don't know Ajax is asynchronous Java and XML. It should be asynchronous Java XML / JSON now because it's not just XML. Right, so Ajax is a way of getting data to a web page without loading a web page. So that's what basically Ajax was. Now, why did Ajax change the landscape of JavaScript? Before that, all Java applications were cycling. I mean, you go to the server, get the page. Any change in your UI, you have to do that round trip, right? Most of your business logic, all your business logic was you didn't have anything on your client side. Suddenly, overnight, you realized I can just get the data and do a DOM manipulation because JavaScript allows, even the bare JavaScript allows you to manipulate DOM. You can get access to this. So slowly what happened? The business logic from your server side started trickling up to your client side, right? So I'll give an example. So you have an image and two buttons. You click on this, I want to show something. If you click on the other button, I want to show something else. Traditionally, what you would do, you will click, the request goes to the server gives you back with the new UI. Now what, you just click, go to the server, get the JSON data or the XML data, parse it, you show it here. Your page will not reload, right? So why would this change dramatically? Why the landscape of JavaScript? The reason is, a lot of my applications started performing better, right? I had the power to do more, my business logic started coming into the front end. So I didn't have to do it. Outputs are always bad because you would remember that white space between your DOM gets destroyed, your entire application is loading. So the end user started getting a better experience of the application where they don't have to go do the cyclic trip every time. Then subsequently, certain other things happened was jQuery and tools like that, libraries like that. So what it was all, everything is what comes out of a necessity, right? So when I started doing JavaScript coding, I realized that there are a lot of times I'm rewriting the same stuff in different applications, right? I want to do an uppercase, lowercase, all sort of things I'm doing. Suddenly somebody realized, hey, why don't I create a library, which we have in Java for that matter, right? Or .NET for that matter. You take a math library, math.average, math.random, right? You didn't have anything like that in JavaScript. So somebody created such a library. So that again acted as a catalyst to this whole process where developers started putting more business logic into your, client side, and jQuery gave you much more power and access, much more control and power to manipulate your DOM. And I would say it reached a point where it was exploited. People started writing spaghetti code. Simple as that, right? It reached that point. That's where I'll get to the next session. And to add to all this, two other things happened. IE started losing market share, thank God. Then Chrome and Firefox, these guys started gaining market share, right? And then there's always this nice competition between V8 and SpiderMonkey, who is better performance. So last week I was reading, till last week V8 was the guy to beat. Now last week it came out that SpiderMonkey is better performing in some criteria. I really don't remember what that was. So now I think Google is going to kick that out, right? So who is benefiting from all this? So we are benefiting, right? There's one other point I actually missed to mention here. Can you guys tell me one of the major things that happened in the last 2 years, which shows why JavaScript is relevant? I shouldn't have missed it. It's one of the most important points. Can anyone tell? Have anyone heard about Node.js? Okay, right. So suddenly a client-side language became a server-side language. Think about it. Right. See the journey, how it happened from one to the other. Node.js is built on some smart guys. They took V8 and built a language around it and then deployed it to the server. Imagine JavaScript doing your database queries. Imagine so. And other thing you have to remember is JavaScript by nature is what? Synchronous. Sorry, asynchronous, right? It's by nature is asynchronous. So so you don't have this multiple thread concept or anything. So a bunch of guys, I think it's maintained by Join Group. There's a company called Join. They maintain it right now. So Node.js become extremely popular. I did some, and it's one of the favorite things for hackers. If you go to any hackathon, people start using this. So Node.js is not a complete program, but it's just application programming language where you can add modules. So I mean, it's beyond the topic. But what I want to convey here is that's where we are. So we have JavaScript as a server-side language. For people who don't know that, that is a fact. And I have written applications. You can build APIs, REST APIs. You can build entire web applications from server side using JavaScript. And other thing that scaled up was, I might be wrong, using a two-core processor, they could run the kind of performance they could achieve with Node.js was nothing like Tomcat or nothing. Nobody could, no other language could beat it. No other servers could beat it. Right, that's the kind of performance they extracted. Now the proof of that is what? Walmart, Amazon, Microsoft, these guys started using it. So as a matter of fact, Azure has built-in support for Node.js, so you can deploy it. There are cloud services, which is platform as a service available for Node.js. Right, I'm not deviating from the core topic, but yeah, so you got an idea, right? So I think, do you guys agree with Morpheus now? Is it still relevant? All right, so that's what I wanted. Okay, so what are the things we need to know before we get our hands dirty with AngularJS, right? Before jumping into the world of AngularJS, right? So of course, JavaScript is something you need to know because AngularJS is built on top of. It's a framework for JavaScript. How many of you know MVC pattern? So there are the MVC pattern. So I'm not going to all because that's again a totally different discussion. I just cover what MVC pattern is. What is MVC pattern? How many of you doesn't know MVC pattern? So I see lots of people. Okay, so I'll just tell you what it is. So MVC gives you a separation of concerns in one line. So your data is separated from your business logic, is separated from your view, right? There is no tight integration between all three layers. These are the predominant three layers in any web application for that matter, right? So there is a clear separation of concerns, right? Now, server. So this is where it gets funny. MVC was for what? Server side, right? Now I'm talking about a client-side MVC. Now let's recap server-side MVC. I'm talking from, let's say, a struts application, a JSP-based application, right? What is your V? Your HTMLs, your JSPs, your JS. That's your V. Your M is the data, the objects. Then you have the business logic where you use Pojo, right? So these are the three components: M, V, and C. Now let's take the V. Now I'm saying in the session that within the V you have another MVC. Does that make sense? This is counterintuitive, right, to what I said. Inside a V you still have a MVC. So how can I explain that? Right, so there it goes. So remember I told about Ajax. What does Ajax give you? Objects, JSON objects or XML. So that becomes your M, right? That's your data, right? Then you have your view. View is what? Your HTMLs, right? Then suddenly, like I said, a lot of business logic started trickling into your client side. So you suddenly started having what? A control of where all your business logic needs to be viewed. And also the other intricacies, like if I click on this, which page should load? If I click on this, which page should? So that routing also started coming in. If you think about .NET or any application, you have that routing, right? That I'm not familiar with .NET per se, but in Java you have structs.xml. So all those routing happens. So suddenly an application became complex, and MVC started moving to what? Your client side, right? So you need to understand this concept. If you don't understand the MVC concept, you won't really know where each of the components of AngularJS gets mapped to, right? Another thing is single page application. How many of you have used a single page application? You have used, right? I can bet everyone here have used a single page application, because Facebook, Gmail, those are single page applications. Have you ever noticed the difference? What a single page application is? If you don't know single page application, you will really be confused when you start with AngularJS, right? So what single page applications are? I think I mentioned it a little before. What was the old applications? Every page is a round trip, right? Your views are stored where? Your JSPs or in your app server. It's like, say, your Tomcat. Tomcat has your app server and web server. The web server has all your JSPs, and you just push them out, right? What if I told you you don't need to do that? All the view, all right? In a single page application, the entire application view is loaded at the beginning into the browser, right? This was not possible before. Why? Your computer didn't have that kind of power, because you need RAM to do all those stuff, right? Suddenly it became cheaper and bigger. So browsers became better. That is why you can load an entire application into your browser, even, right? So let's say one of the applications we built like 90 pages. The entire 90 pages I had to load without any data. It's like static things, right? The templates I load into the UI, and then I hide and show each based on my business logic. Now this hide and show is where I need these MVCs. Like when I click on this or this data or that data, right? I need to show certain things. So I load the entire content into my UI. So that is what single page applications are. And AngularJS is a framework for single page applications. So just underline that. Even they have said it. Don't try to, I mean, you can use it another way, but it's not ideal. So AngularJS is a framework for single page applications, right? So if you, I usually explain to guys like what single page application is, like a photo and a photo frame, right? So usually if you look any single page applications, you have index.html or some app some home.html. This is like your frame, right? It won't change. Only thing that will change is what the content inside this, right? So what this is called is, this is your index page. Everything else are called partials, right? So your application might be consisting of one index page and 50 or 60 partials. So you will not, so your app will never ever reload, right? So you just change this content as and when you need it. Now, can anybody what's the disadvantage of this? I'm talking a lot about SPA. So what would be the obvious disadvantage when I try to do this? Sorry? Instead of the data, not the data is yet to come, but the DOM elements are all there, right? It's too much information, too much of data. The DOM objects are already there, which I really don't need at that point in time, right? So managing DOM becomes a problem in that sense. So that's why I'm saying this was not possible maybe a few years back or 5 years back, where you didn't have that kind of processing power. So that is why some of the applications might crash. There was an instance, I remember while I worked, we were playing around with this, right? So client, always you play around with what clients have a requirement, right? So we build this prototype sort of application. We realized the mobile application started heating up. Well, a web application was running and mobile application started heating up. Why? Because it's using so much of battery, the RAM, because everything runs on your RAM in this sense, right? Your JavaScript. So you need to be very cautious while doing this. All these frameworks to an extent helps you with such things, right? So you have any, so I mean, I want this to be a more interactive session. Come on guys, like if you have questions, right? Fine, I hope, I mean, otherwise I assume that I'm doing good. So, okay, so other thing I need you guys to understand is framework versus library. I think Deepu just mentioned. So what's the difference between a framework and a library? jQuery is a library, right? Angular is a framework. So what's the difference? I mean, is it more like uh, invention versus discovery? No, right? What is this? Framework and library, it's very obvious. Struts is a framework.
Angular provides the structure of the
Right.
page.
So it gives you an opinion or a structure saying that this is how you build. Right. What is your framework for a house? The foundation, you know, the plinth, the wall, that's a foundation. That's a framework. Right. You can use any material for that matter. That becomes your, that's like sort of the, so you can use the JCB to put it or anything. Those becomes your tools to help you build. But the framework is what? Set. You need to first build this platform or foundation before you start. So that becomes a what? So that's, so the problem with the framework is you have to do exactly like this. You cannot, you know, there, I mean, different frameworks give you the freedom or leeway to do certain things, but that's how you usually do it, right? So jQuery is not a replacement, or AngularJS is not a competitor of jQuery, right? jQuery, Dojo, EXTJS, all these things belong to one family. AngularJS, Ember, Backbone, all this belongs to a framework. So think of it like um, Spring and struts for Java, right? So that's, so you guys clear? So these are the minimum concepts you need to know. And I mean, the first one is the most important one. So spend some time reading this, understanding the, otherwise you will be lost, right? Okay, so then let's get to the next. All right. So what is AngularJS? So I'm just slowly building it up to why we need AngularJS. That's my idea, is I want to convince you why we need AngularJS, right? So I think over the course of last 20 minutes or so, I told a lot of problems that come up with, like you have spaghetti code, you have a lot of code, 2,500 lines of code in one page. How do you maintain this? How do you manage this, right? How do you debug this? How do you make an enhancement on top of this, right? And JavaScript is notorious in the sense, global scope issues are the scope issues are there, hosting issues are there. There are a bunch of issues that comes with part of JavaScript. So how do you manage all those things? So suddenly somebody, I mean, people, I mean, again, it's out of necessity, right? Okay, I have to build something to make my life easier as a developer. All right. So then came around Backbone JS, then AngularJS came. Then, I mean, it's not in sequential order per se, but it is just happened to appear. And there is actually a site called To Do MVC. Okay, check it out. To Do MVC does only one app. It's called the To Do app, using all these frameworks. So this one guy who sits there and does every framework that come out, he does a To Do app, and then he does a comparison between. But I mean, it's a very good comparison to a certain extent. But To Do is, you know, it's as big as it gets, right? So when it goes to actual application, it might not be the scenario, right? So before I start, I'll just show you a video, right? Up. Okay, let's close. One second. Can I get the audio on this laptop? I think it was working.
Original Angular was actually a little different, which was it's good policy. So the idea behind Angular, original Angular, was actually a little different, which was that there's a lot of web designers out there, people who
to make that easy. So let's go back a few years to 2009, where I think I said, Mishko, you should go learn JavaScript. This seems like the new thing.
Okay, so this is a talk from Google I/O 2013 between Mishko, who is the father of AngularJS, and his manager at Google, right? So the guy with the French, he's Mishko, and the other guy is a manager. So this is, I'm just showing you a 30-second clip on what they're talking. So just listen to this.
And what did you do? What was your first inclination as a newbie in the world of JavaScript? What did you do?
well, write a framework, right? What else would you do?
That's right. Every newbie should write a framework. It's good policy.
So the idea behind Angular, original Angular, was actually a little different, which was that there's a lot of web designers out there, people who are not really programmers, developers per se, but they know how to put HTML together because it's so declarative and it's easy to do. And so could we enable the web designers to be able to build a very trivial, simple applications just by dropping a little bit of extra markup logic into the HTML so that you don't even have to manage your backend. You have some database project, 17,000 lines code.
Unhappy with our development pace.
Yes, the velocity was not so great.
Okay, so these guys were working on something called Google Feedback. This guy, right? So he wasn't happy about the way it is going. So that's a subsequent conversation from me.
We spent about 6 months, 3 of us, working on this particular project. 17,000 lines of code later, we were really not making the progress we wanted to make, and so we're frustrated. And
so 6 months, 3 guys working on a project at Google. So they should be smart guys, right? At Google. So and they ended up having an application which was like 17,000 lines of code.
Frustration, I went to Brad and I said, Brad, I'm working on this thing in my free time, kind of an open source project, and I bet you I could rewrite the whole thing in 2 weeks.
And I said, go for it, because 2 weeks, whatever. But I don't think you quite made it in 2 weeks.
No, I didn't make it in 2 weeks. It took me 3 weeks. And 1,500 lines of code later, we actually have rewritten the whole application.
Right. So this guy was able to rewrite an entire application which was developed by 6 guys in 6 months by 3 guys, 17,000 lines of code. 3 weeks later, he rewrote it using AngularJS in 1,500 lines of code. It's not me saying this, is this guy saying, right? Hey, it's hard to believe. If I say without this proof, it might be hard to believe, right? So then this manager decided, what? This is the folklore in AngularJS world. So the manager said, why don't we pack it up and ship it as a framework? Why don't others start using it? So that's how this. So that just gives you the power of what AngularJS can do, right? All right. So back to the talk. Right. So at this point, did I convince you AngularJS is good? Right. That's my job here, right? I'm just trying to convince you guys AngularJS is good. So all right. So AngularJS is a client-side framework. AngularJS cannot be used on server side. I'm not saying cannot. Node.js might be able to use it. I should be very careful when tech talks where I say cannot, but most likely that's wrong. And AngularJS is a client-side framework. It is maintained and developed by Google. It provides a client-side MVC structure to your application. Right? That's what it does. So things to remember. It's a client-side framework. It provides MVC capabilities to your client-side application, right? So I think I mentioned about the MVC capabilities. Now, so when these guys developed this application, there was some philosophy they had, right, when they started it. Did they achieve it? That's a different question. We'll have a discussion on that towards the end of this talk. But so these guys believed in a couple of things, and that's very evident when you start doing AngularJS. One is they believe in declarative coding than imperative coding. So what does it mean? Would you prefer math.average, or you write your own code to find out the total number of values, divide by that? Which one do you prefer? Right, so the math.average is basically a declarative way of doing stuff, right? Imperative is what? Line by line explaining to the compiler, this is what I want you to do. So there is a high level of abstraction in everything you do there, right? So that's basically something a library or a framework should provide you. But these guys go to the other extent of this, where it's a lot of magic. You don't really know. I mean, you don't have that visibility into what's happening inside, and suddenly a lot of magic happens, and it starts working like that. So I mean, to a certain extent, I don't like that, because you don't know what's happening, especially when you're building real large applications. When you run into performance issues, you don't know what to do with that. But since these guys have done it properly, I mean, they have hit the performance benchmarks. So there's a huge layer of abstraction happening, and they really truly believe in declarative. So once I get into the core concepts of this, I'll show you where this happens. Second thing they believe in is testing is equally important as development. How many of you do estimates for your companies, project estimates, right? What is how much percentage of testing development time would you put for testing? What is your thumb rule? Like 100 days of testing development, how many days you put for testing? 20-25, right? So these guys believe in 50%. I mean, equal. In the sense equal. They not in the sense of days, but the importance. So what happens when you develop a language which gives equal importance to development and testing? Anyone? It's very simple, because you have to build the applications to support testing. Right. JUnit is an afterthought to Java, right? Have anyone? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot of Java here. How many of you guys are Java? Who know Java? Okay, I'm totally ignorant about .NET, so I'm in no position to talk about it. So, but yeah, so in Java world, you realize that JUnit, which is a unit testing framework, is an afterthought to Java. It was not built as part of Java, right? So when you do unit testing in any language, I assume this is the case with most of the languages, where unit testing frameworks are like somebody else built it after the language got. But when these guys started building it, they gave equal importance to testing. And what is one of the things you have to, let's say we are assigned to, as a group, we are assigned to develop a language, and our manager says we need to do it with equal importance to testing and development. What are certain things we'll think about? Okay. See, one of the thing is it should be modular, easily testable, right? See, there are certain things you cannot test on it. Let's say I'm a banking application. When I submit, it goes to Visa, Master, does the whole round trip. Do you want to test this entire scenario on a unit test? No, right? Do you want to do it on integration testing? No, right? So you should have that built-in capabilities where I can mimic this, or I can just take that out, put it something else just to mimic it. I just need the data. I just need the success scenario. I don't want this request to go all over the world and come back, right? So I just need something to plug in there which gives me a dummy HTTP response, which boom, starts working. Correct. So this entire thing, when you look at it, when you go through this, they have done everything such that testing gets equal importance. And when you start learning this language, the problem is you feel this is very irritating, because when you're learning, you don't want to test, right? So they have a built-in testing framework like Protractor. They use Jasmine, things like that to do testing. So, I mean, as a beginner, I would say when you start learning, they have a very good tutorial. Learn unit testing along with that. If you keep it for later, it will happen what happened to me, right? So don't keep it for later. It is really annoying to start learning, but you will, when you start building enterprise grade applications, you would need it. And the kind of power they give you for testing is amazing. You can do a lot of testing with this, right? So these are a few of the things, and last but not least, it's ideal for what? Single page applications. So let me a little bit elaborate on that. Again, I'm going back to Java. I shouldn't be doing it. ASP. Oh, ASP guys, right? So you know what templating? Every language has a templating, right? When do you use templating? I want to display a list of students from a database. You really don't know what the length of the list is. So you cannot, in your HTML, you cannot say I would want 50 list. You won't put 50 li just for the sake of it, right? What you'll do, you put one li, repeat it. So that's what templating is, right? And all these languages like ASP, Java, whatever, they give you what? The templating built into it. Angular also has templating. So why do you want to mix these two, right? So there was a scenario where I had to do it for a client where they already had a JSP-based Java, like Java servers pages, and the client insisted we should try AngularJS. So after going through this documentation, I realized it's not easy to do that, because why do you want to do this in a servers? I mean, the round trip application. It really doesn't make sense, right? There are a lot of things which are singletons or globals here, which get destroyed every time you go back. It defeats the purpose of it. So if you go through the blogs, they would say you can do it. Nobody says you can't. I mean, nothing is impossible, right? But I wouldn't recommend doing it. So what is the takeaway? It is a client-side framework ideal for single-page application, which gives you MVC capabilities, right? Time check. Are we on time? Okay, good. Thanks. Okay. So what I'm going to show you guys now is a sample code, right? So things are going to get a little dry from here now, right? So hang on. If you had did you guys have your coffees? Right. Okay. Good. So what I'll do is, I don't know if I can do with this mic. So in this, if you look at the slide, there are some sample code here. I mean, forget about this. This is more useful for. No, I think that's fine. I can switch. Right. I mean, this is, no, I put it in here initially thinking this would help. So I did a trial run with one of my new recruits, trying to teach him AngularJS with this, and I realized it's not going to work out. So yesterday night I sat and I created a lot of JS fiddles. You know what JS fiddle is? JS fiddle is an online tool where you can start creating. So I realized I shouldn't be referring to this. I will rather refer to this, and I leave it here so that if somebody uploads this to SharePoint, people can still refer to this slide. So I have few things in here which I will show you. Okay, so this is a sample AngularJS application, right? Now, what makes this application AngularJS? That ng, did anyone see that ng app in there? Which is, see, that's okay. That's it. Top one is HTML. This is the JavaScript files, and this is your result, whatever you get. How do I do that? Can everyone see it from last row? You guys can see it? No? Okay, let me raise it further. How about it now? Okay, good. I think that's the best we can do, right? All right. Okay, so there are certain things you need to know before you start writing the code. So what makes your application AngularJS? A typical Java application. So you need to have that library built in, right? You need to import that library. So that is your, if you look on the left side, right? So it's AngularJS 1.2.1, right? So AngularJS is now at 1.3. So JS Fiddle actually gives you a facility to choose from a lot of. So when you create a small code base, right, you can choose which one. For example, you have jQuery built in here, all sort of stuff in here, knockout, everything in here. So ideally, if you look at the code, what you will see here is on top, on the head, you'll have a script tag which imports what? AngularJS. Either you can import from a CDN, Google provides you the CDN, or you can import it from your own application, right? So that is a step one to make your application AngularJS. Right, that's the magic layer. So they have both the full-fledged Angular.js and min file as well. Right. Now, Second thing is that ng app. So I mean, does it look like JavaScript? No, sorry. I mean, yeah, anything in the HTML part, does it look like JavaScript? What does it look like? HTML, right? Does it again sound to what I told before? Declarative versus imperative, right? A programmer really doesn't know. I mean, okay, I'll get to do it later. But see, again, all the concept here is a developer doesn't really need to know the inner working all the time, right? So that ng app acts like your main class in any programming language. That's what bootstraps your AngularJS project, right? So each of these components I will go through in the subsequent session. I mean fiddles. So ng app my app basically refers to this. So this could be in your HTML itself under a script tag, right? Yeah, good. Thanks. So you can have this within here. Would you do it or not? We can. Will you do it or not? Should you rather? No, right? Because again defeats the purpose. Your HTML code is going to get cluttered as this JavaScript is going to grow. It's very difficult to manage. So you ideally separate it out in this different JavaScript file. So since I'm using this fiddle, I don't have to explicitly say this name of the file. It is automatically imported in there. Clear. So don't get confused because I'm using a JS fiddle, right? Only advantage I get is I can do some live coding if I need to, right? So this is so two lines here which are missing now is what? Include script tag angular.js, script tag this JS, right? Now when AngularJS boots up, it looks up ng app my app. When it sees, it refers to this, right? So everything in AngularJS are modules. Everything in AngularJS are modules. Every single feature they recommend you write as separate modules. So I'll get to that. I'll show you what it is. So this makes this AngularJS application. Now you know what some interesting thing that's happening here. That name, right? So names are double braces name, right? What you're getting here, Angular is awesome, right? How does it happen? So this is your view. Controller is your controller, right? So right. So what happening here? I'm assigning name with a value. AngularJS is awesome. So is this a static HTML or a dynamic HTML in that sense? It's a dynamic HTML, right? You're not. So so 2 lines of code suddenly converts your static HTML to dynamic application. So your name becomes what? Right? So I'll just show something else. I have to keep this mic down. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Okay, if I run this, what would be the result? Okay. Oops. Where did it's gone? The control is gone. Okay. Right. What happened here? Correct. So this becomes what? A normal HTML thing, which is a markup. What you get is what you type, right? So this is the magic that makes your application Angular versus not an Angular application. Make sense? Right? So other thing you need to notice is there's a scope here, like a hierarchy is built in. So you can have one page, one HTML which is partly Angular, which is not. This necessarily doesn't have to be entirely Angular, right? So you can have it partly done. Correct. It's clear? Okay. So this is a sample application. All right. So we'll get into modules, right? So what are modules? So I'm going to relate to what I'm trying.
So before going to modules, it will be better if that is, people can ask questions, right?
Yes, I have.
So just to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So to start, so let me ask you the first question. To start working with AngularJS or working with AngularJS, all I need to do is just download, go to the AngularJS website, download that AngularJS file, include it, that is in the script tag, and then I have to copy paste this code there, that is ng.
You don't have to copy paste.
Okay.
The ng app, the only thing you need to add is that ng app in there.
Just go to that. No,
Right.
that JavaScript bar my app is equal to Angular module. That is, I have to
No, yeah,
create
this okay. This makes
Yeah.
Angular.
So this, that is, if I have this code with me, I can just paste it and create a module name mg app
Yep.
in there. Okay, and have a div and ng app. Use that name there, right?
Yeah. So this is the app you build.
Okay.
Right. So I usually refer. I might not be correct in saying this. Somebody who really knows AngularJS might shout at me by saying this, but this is more like the main class. Right. But the difference in AngularJS is you can have multiple main classes. So which again defeats the purpose, right?
Okay.
So think about to begin with. Think about it's like the main class where all the where you boots up.
So if I am thinking in a normal JavaScript developer angle, there are some new keywords or new items that I have to learn. That is, one is ng app. That is one new keyword there. Then that double braces, that is you use for replacing it.
Correct. So yeah, no. The reason why I'm showing this is I just want to show this is how an application is, because there are three before you can understand this fully. So bear with me. I had to get through this because if I want to show a running app, I have to put all these pieces together to make it a running app. So that's why I'm not explaining too much here. Only thing I'm explaining is this is what the scope is, right? That ng app makes whatever under ng app is AngularJS.
Okay.
Right. Everything beyond that is, we'll keep it for later. So I'll explain that because the next immediate step is modules, right? So this is the AngularJS API. So once AngularJS boots up, like in jQuery, you get the $, right? So here, this object is exposed to you. Angular object is exposed to you. So Angular.module is a way you create that module, right? So if I change this my app to my app 1, what happens to my application? It won't work. Even the first line of Angular is awesome stops working because it doesn't know what it is, right? So you can give any name. So, but both these names, this is how it refers. This is how the mapping happens, right? From there, it gets mapped to this here. So there's an obvious question: can I have multiple ng apps? So that's a little advanced topic, but I'll just tell you. I figured out recently, so I haven't encoded. As part of this, preparing for this, I realized it. You can have multiple, but the problem is AngularJS boots up only the first one. Automatically boots up only the first one. Whatever, because HTML it's top down, right? Whatever ng app it encounters first, that's what it boots up. Second one, you have to manually bootstrap. So there is another thing called Angular.bootstrap, which we can use to do it. I mean, that you get to that point when you're building real complex big applications, or you're just trying it out, right? So modules. So everything in AngularJS are modules. So I mean, other way of thinking is what you just saw. It's like hash include IO of C, right? So this again, I want to map what I'm trying to tell. Map it back to the philosophy what these guys said. Modules really helps your application become what? Unit testable, right? So otherwise this application AngularJS, this is little extra work for me. So everything is a module which helps you make it reusable. Let's say for example, I built a module to show a Google map. All I need to do is give the JavaScript to you. If you have AngularJS, you just go module, you get that, right? And whatever the dependencies are there, I have to be back. So if I'm depending on another JS, I have to say that, but I can package this and give it to you, right? So that is one of the powerful features of having a module. There are a couple of other concepts which I'll get through the next slides. Controller, filters, directives. Everything can be declared inside a module. We'll get to that. We'll understand it once we get there. third point is what I just mentioned, right? I can package it and give it to anyone. So in our actual applications, there are a lot of people writing a lot of modules which are using for, especially for Google Maps, your common stuff, right? You use the modules which they give. How many of you know Bootstrap? Right, Bootstrap. So there is even an AngularJS module for Bootstrap. So you can import it, right? Say for example, Bootstrap has this modal, which comes up with the model or whatever that comes with that popo or whatever. So in AngularJS, if you import that module, you can all the JavaScript you can trigger using AngularJS code itself. You don't need to go back to your JavaScript, right? So everything you can import and use it as modules. Other thing is it can be loaded in any order. So this helps again and comes back to testing part, right? Now unit test when you this is the last point is what I told about testing a banking application which goes around the world, right? Unit test you only have to load the relevant modules, right? So I mean this is modules are same as here. This is how you create a module, Angular.module, right? So I'll show you a little more complex applications once we start moving along. Right. All right. Sure.
So could you please use mic because it is going live?
Yeah, I have a question that you said about scope, right? While using the Angular.
Yeah.
So the scope of the particular controller or what you say thing relies on the end of that particular HTML tag, right?
Right. So the scope I mean it was a little bit of a misnomer. The scope I told was a little different. There's actually a scope object which is available in AngularJS $scope. So don't confuse with the third slide is next slide is about that $scope. But the scope I was telling was the hierarchy, right? If I have a div tag, what is inside it is the scope. I can have a child scope also, right? I can have a div inside a div, but whatever is beyond that, it's out of scope, right? So ng app is, so when we do it, usually ng app is put on what? HTML tag itself. So which means what?
So
the entire application gets it.
So if the entire application needs to get that particular module, then it should be included in the HTML tag.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, not necessarily. Maybe if you have a div inside, but whatever is a top bottom, right? Usually it's HTML tag. So
business should come inside that, right?
No business. Business
Only?
logic won't. That's again. So that's what MVC is here. You don't put business logic here. Business logic goes to your controller. So that is one thing. So if are you experienced in jQuery? jQuery.
No.
Okay. So usually, see, there's always a problem. People who have worked in jQuery, because you need to unlearn a lot of things before you learn this. People who are ignorant about jQuery is fine because it's quite easy to. It's like switching between left-hand drive and right-hand drive, right? Who don't know driving can easily go to US and learn. Who are driven here, they have to go first 1 month. They have to unlearn, then you start learning. So that's a problem there. So I'll get to the scopes. Basically, to answer your question, it is what that tags are, start and end of the tag, right? Yeah.
Actually, in previous slide, you defined the module, right? AngularJS module that you assigned it to a JavaScript variable, then Angular.module of something. So actually, we can use without that variable my app. Also, we can directly start use with the Angular.module to bootstrap our application. So we don't need to assign to the JavaScript object. I mean, that my app. Yeah. Yeah, so it's optional, but may I know what is the difference? Is there any?
All right. So your name? Sorry. Okay, Uday Kumar. So what Uday Kumar is asking is a difference in syntax. So basically, he has done this before. So that's why this question is. When you start looking into the app, you might get confused. One way I did this was var my app. This is basically a JavaScript variable here. Everything here is a JavaScript variable. So there's nothing else. It's all JavaScript. But this looks very obvious JavaScript. This is also JavaScript internally, but so what I'm doing is my app dot controller. So there are other elements, other things like directives. So each of these you can just use this my app. So once it looks cleaner. Other way of doing is you don't assign this my app, you chain it. So you say Angular.module this, you dot subsequent thing. So I have done both ways. I don't know. I mean, it make a big difference in the sense. I mean, it really matters when you have multiple modules. Let's say your app has my app 1 and my app 2. And when you're including it somewhere else, it helps. All right. So there are certain examples where I have shown that. So probably once we get there, others will get a hang of it. Right. Good. Excuse me.
In that module there's another argument. So a square.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, this is the problem, and there's a lot more. So I have to. You guys have to wait. We'll get to that. Right. That is for dependency injection. We'll get to that point. So see, I had to show some application which AngularJS runs. So I cannot have all the features has to be there for it to run. I cannot explain it before. I have to. So we'll limit the questions to this. We'll get to these modules later. All right. So one of the magic, this one of the interesting features of data, AngularJS is data binding. Right. So what is data binding? Anyone? Right. So AngularJS has this magic of two-way data binding. Okay, so what is two-way data binding? Right. I mean, that's one way, right? What is two-way? Okay, I'll tell. So, right. So if your data changes, your view changes. If your view changes, your data changes. You get the point? So give me an example where it can work. Controller, right?
In the Gmail, if we click a mail, the mail will be open. In the same time, it will be read in the server.
Right. So not the server, no. Yeah, server as in you hit the JavaScript part which immediately sends the data to server. Yeah, you can do it on type, that event. So I will just go through this. So what he said is exactly right. So when your model and view are bound together, right? So this is your typical application where you have view, a template, and a model. Template, I told you what a template is, right? That business. So usually what happens is once a page loads, one time it happens and it just does it. Every time data changes, you have to do or refresh or something like that, or you have to force this to happen. In jQuery, you force the DOM element to get refreshed, or change in this event or something. You force to do this. All this happens as magic in AngularJS, right? So what it does is, if your model changes, your view gets affected. Your view changes, your model gets affected. And the templating is compiling as and when this happens. So if you have a list, if it changes, so if you have a list like 10 users, once you start typing or searching, suddenly this reduces by filtering it, right? So I'll show you an example so you'll get to know it better. So I've split it into two here. One is data binding one, which is view to model, and second one is model to view, right? So if I type a name here, right? So what would happen? See. These two are bind, right? That. So if you look the code here, okay, this is all right. So you have this input box, right? NG model. So all this NG business, it's called directives in AngularJS, right? So there is another slide on what a directive is. So all this NG, whatever you see, are called directives. So NG model. So whatever value goes into this input is assigned to this variable called name. That's what this does. That's what NG model is. That's a magic, right? This name is available in the backend, which is backend in the sense client side backend, right? So I can access that data. See, I type first time when I ran this, right? If I do alert, nothing is there. It's undefined. I'm not doing anything. I'm just typing certain things, right? If I do alert, what would happen? Sorry. Right? And if you notice, there is no alert or anything on my client side or the view side. Where is my alert? Is on the controller, right? How does this name from here magically get?
So this is all the code I have here. There's no other code. How does this name here get magically assigned to this name variable here? So that is one-way binding in AngularJS, right? Confused? You should be. No? Good? Okay, so this is what one-way binding in AngularJS is. This is one of the, this funny thing. There is a learning curve for AngularJS. If you draw the learning curve, it's like this. The first day is like, oh wow, amazing, right? When you do the hello world, you see all these things, classic. So next, 1 week later, this what the hell? Why am I doing this? I would rather go with jQuery. So next, suddenly you realize about the power of directives, and you go to directives. Oh wow! So then this cycle keeps on happening. I've been through this entire stuff, and now then finally you hit a plateau. Right? At that point, you realize you need to learn JavaScript to another level if you want to just cross this plateau. Right. So yeah, that's the typical learning curve for AngularJS. You just need to persist through it. Correct. So you're clear with this, right? One-way binding. So I'll show the next one, which is a two-way bind. So this again, binding from a view to a model to a view. This was a view to a model, right? It's a classic example of a clock. So if you see my HTML, is there anything in there? Just a clock, a variable. Every time the time changes, it's getting reflected there. So who's doing it? What's the magic? Right? So the magic happens here. See, other thing is you don't really see the magic. Magic happens in the Angular.js files. So that's the level of abstraction they have built in. You, as a developer, you just really doesn't need to know all this. See, what do a developer typically do? Other than people who are working in Google, Microsoft, Symantec, or what do a typical developer do? Write business logic. Right. That's a build a web application which is CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. That's what 90% of the application. Can't see? See, the problem is if I zoom one more level, I can't see the top tab. Let me try it. Can you see now? All right. I mean, if I had to run it, I'll just reduce it. It's fine. Okay. So where was I? All right. I'll get back to this. Okay. So here, what is happening is your data in the back is changing, right? The client, the JavaScript side, the data changes. How does it change? I have written a function here. I'm using a JavaScript function set interval, which is the standard interval. I've given 1000 milliseconds of. So every 1000 milliseconds it will execute this. Forget about this, right? Don't look into anything which has a dollar on it. Just don't get confused. The only thing you need to know is the set interval is called. So every 1000 milliseconds this keeps running. What happens next? It calls this function, right? This function is what? This here, which returns what? A new date. Now, but how does this data get pushed up there? What gives this two-way binding is this two braces here, right? That is what two-way binding is. That tells that variable it is two-way bound. There's another way of doing it in AngularJS is ng-bind. Instead of putting this, so there's always this debate, which is better, which is more performant, ng-bind versus. For me, it never mattered because I couldn't figure out, right? So some people say ng-bind is better versus. One reason why people say is, if your app loads up, right, and you don't have data, sometimes you will see this bracket popping up and going. But if you use ng-bind, you won't see this. All right, so that's what thing is. So this gives that ng two-way binding capability of this. Clear? You guys following me? All right. Okay, now we'll get into dependency injection. All right. So what is dependency injection? So dependency injection is nothing but a design pattern. There's nothing to do with AngularJS per se. It's just a design pattern, right? It's used widely across different languages. One I've used like a lot is Spring. Spring uses dependency injection, which is a Java framework, which uses Spring dependency injection extensively. So dependency injection is a design pattern wherein you get hold of components or modules as and when you needs it, right? So dependency injection DI, further on I'll call DI. DI is omnipresent in Java. Wherever you look in Java, AngularJS, DI is present. So can you give me a reason why the guys who developed this word have decided to go with DI? No, think about the philosophies I told maybe. Testing, someone said, yeah, testing, right? It again goes back to my capability of testing the application. So I can think about this scenario, same scenario. I have to test a credit card. I have to go through all the Visa servers, but I don't need to do that. I have written a dummy module which will give me back the JSON, success or error response. I'll just include that. I get my testing will just grab this guy, right? So when you have modules, if your applications are full of modules, what do you need to do? You need some mechanism of picking and choosing which one you want, right? When you want. So dependency injection gives a is the way AngularJS does it for you. Questions on this? Right. Good. So I'll show you an example. Okay, I don't have an example of this. Time check. Good. Okay. All right. So. Okay. Good. So. Control. Right. Oh, okay. Good. Good. Right. Okay. So how do you do dependency injection here? Right. See, somebody asked about this array, empty array. This is where you add your dependencies into this application, right? So if this module basically doesn't depend on any other major part of it. There are certain modules which comes with AngularJS, right? Which is HTTP, right? Or, ng resources. Ng resources allows you to do certain things. So whatever modules I need, I'll put it in there, right? So I think I had an example. Okay, there you go. Okay, first of all, here's the example where I'm not using that var my app thing, right? Somebody asked me this, right? So this is one other way of. So this is one thing I don't like about Angular. They have too many different ways of doing one thing. So when you start learning something, you have certain idea in mind. Then you go to Google and try to figure it out. The guy who has written is using an entirely different thing, but he's getting the same result, right? So it will leave you hanging dry, figuring out how this is done. And especially it gets really bad when it gets to directives and other services and things like that. So people have their own way, and these guys start blogging about this is better than that, right? So that's one thing which is really annoying about AngularJS for a beginner. Okay, so and again, I get asked this question: what is the difference? Basically, I really don't know what the difference is. Maybe I should start looking into their specs or something where I get figure it out. Okay, so this you see here is these are modules I'm getting dependencies on, right? And these are what I get. Again, here there are two ways of doing this. So if you run this application, I'm getting a result, right? I can use this format. So this is something interesting. So I can use this format of, see, this is inside this array, right? See, this is the end and this is the beginning. Here you're saying scope. Scope is a variable you need, which is exposed by AngularJS. I'll tell what it is. Notify is something I have written myself, a module which I created for something, right? Again, I'm writing scope here and notify here. And I'm using the scope and notify inside this. So doesn't it look like too much of code in there, right? The scope is coming twice, notify is coming twice, and I'm using the same thing inside this. So there's another way of doing this is, I can take this out. And prior to code it runs. Let's see. Yeah, it runs. Right? There is no, you're not getting any error now. Why it's working is because both these ways work, but Angular recommends the other way. This is easier, but Angular recommends the other way. Why? So in every JavaScript application, irrespective of AngularJS or anything, finally you need to build and ship it, right? You need to publish this or deploy it. So you try to reduce the size by what? There's a process called minifying the application, where you try to minify. So what happens with AngularJS is all these things get screwed up when you try to minify it, right? So, but if you use this syntax, it prevents distorting your program while minification. But the other one, all the minification tools try to replace your variables with something or the other, right? So I mean, I know the reason, but if you want, I can get. See, in this method, I don't really need to use scope here. I can use any name and refer the same name here, right? So while minification, if that tool replaces this $scope to some X or Y, it replaces this also, it starts working. In the other method, what happens is, I have to exactly tell what the name is here, because that is the only way Angular would know what to depend upon. Here the Angular depends upon this, right? So I think that minification tool has something to do with things inside this parenthesis versus this array. So I don't know. So that's basically the reason why they are. So once you start learning about this, you start looking into code, you'll totally get confused. Some guys write like this, some other guy write in another way. Even in AngularJS tutorial, half of it is one way, half the other way, right? So yeah, that's one thing you need to bear in mind. Oh. Okay. Right. Fine. So, right. So I think we're getting to a close here. I think there are a few more hang in there, right? So there are a few more things, and we should be done. So other important thing about AngularJS is the controller. So controller is where your business logic lives, right? So somebody asked me, should I write where I business logic in HTML and all? That is totally not acceptable. I mean, there's no way you can do it for that matter. I mean, yes, you can write some business logic inside your. Remember your ASP and JSP code. How does it look like? You have a HTML named as a JSP. You have the scriptlets, which has a Java code, which does the business logic in there. Then you have some JavaScript code. And if I want to make a business logic change, I am done. I had no idea where to figure it out. But if you look at AngularJS code, your HTML is clean. Your HTML will not have any business logic. So immediately a developer, irrespective of he has worked in this project or not, he can immediately start looking into what? Controllers. That's where your business logic is, right? So that's again part of this MVC thing. So it separates the concern from one layer. So controllers is what gives you that power. You have seen controllers in the previous example. So so there is no set pattern. A lot of people say use this way, but when I usually do is I give every feature or every page, every partial, one controller. So you have a login page, you have a home page, you have a about me page, you have a profile page. What I usually do is I'll give 4 controllers for each one of these, right? So my business logic for each of these pages will be where? Then I started using the same name. So about me controller. So my developers, my team, when started looking at the code, it became very easy. Hari would agree to that. He would say, okay, it's very quite intuitive. It's not a standard from you just it happened to it happened when you start coding like that. So controllers is where your business logic is, as simple as that. So let's see here. Okay, so what tells you that this business logic to use versus other one? That ng controller you see there on top, right? All these ng things are what? Directives. What do you see that ng controller on top tells AngularJS which controller to look for? My controller. That's a name. So you can give any name for that matter. So this tells AngularJS look out for my controller. Now where do you define a my controller? So don't look there. How do you create a my controller? It's again what? A module, right? Everything is a module. right? So where you see this? Here, Angular.module. Controller is the keyword of API which creates a controller for you. You give the name here, my controller. If I have a typo in here, this won't work. Right, this is not going to work. I'll just show it to you. If I change this to something here, see the test went out from here, right? That was the Angular part in there. It doesn't really know what it is now. So, see, right? So you can have multiple controllers in a page. It's not like ng app. You can have one. So again, think about ng app is like only one in a page. Controllers, you can have multiple controllers in a page. Controllers are again controlled by the scope, which is the divs, which you whatever elements which you have placed this in. That's where you control this. Correct? You guys following me? Right. So the business logic for this leaves here. So my business logic for this is quite simple. I want to call notification when I click on a button. Right? How do I do? AngularJS in JavaScript, how do you do? Event, click event, right? AngularJS gives you something called ng click. Only thing, again, see how descriptive it is. There's no JavaScript in here. I simply say I created a button, ng click. It calls a function, passes the value. What value? Message down to here. And that function call notify I've created here. So this is again suddenly there's a lot of magic inside. Like how does this all tie together? AngularJS takes care of it, right? So the problem happens, like I said, when you want to start looking deeper, then you get lost. You guys this is very important part of learning AngularJS. You guys following it? You guys clear what this is, right? Okay, so this is how you define a controller, and this is how you access a controller. So you can access a method function like that, but on a click, or you can simply access that variable as a scope dot. I'll tell what scope is, right? Now, scope is the glue between UI and this. I'm getting into that. Next slide is or tab. Blah blah blah. Okay, scope. Back to scope. So scope. See, you separated. Somebody decided to separate a view and a controller. Now, who is going to send the data between one to the other? You're not seeing anything. How do I access this data? Right? So $scope is a variable, that object, not variable, the object that gets initialized. It's already available for you, just like a document variable, an object in JavaScript, right? Gets available to you when AngularJS boots up, right? So what $scope is? $scope is for every scope. So if you define a controller within a div, scope is for what? That div. If it's another div, you have a separate scope. Clear? So scope is how you access data between a view and a controller, right? Right? Yes, no, yes, yes, no, yes, good. Okay, so that's how you access this data between two different layers. Clear? Now there are two types of scope. One is root scope and this normal scope. Think of root scope like global variable, right? Root scope is the parent. You get the end. It is accessible throughout the application. So you have 10 different. Okay, this is. I have 10 different pages in an application. Each page has one controller, so one scope for each page. So I have 10 scopes, right? $10 scope. Can I share this between each page? No, because scope is for each of this controller for each of this page. Let's say I want to save I logged in. My name came back as Liju Pillai, right? I want to display it on somewhere on all pages. Where will I store this? Global. You need a global variable, right? Right. So where do you put this? Root scope. So root scope is across the application. Scope is for each of the controller, which makes root scope very dangerous. Why? It's accessible across the application. A larger application, who knows who's going to change it what? Right? Anyone? There is no private public business here, right? Anyone can access this from any class and just change it. So if you rely on this here, so they don't. If you go to the best practices of AngularJS, it's like don't use root scope for this. Is the classic example. What I told you, right? You log in, you get the name, you need to save somewhere. That is one good example. Don't use it for your global parameters and all. There is another way of doing it. Correct? So there is an example. I don't know. I mean, would help. I'll just show that. Anyways, see, every AngularJS example will have a scope in there. So see this. This dollar scope accesses that it's for that controller. Correct. So you're accessing this message. Sorry, this call notify function through this thing. Now, yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's what you do, right? Clear? In the first example which I showed you, right? The basic example. Here I changed this name using what? Say. You're accessing that variable through scope. So scope is like the glue between these two layers. It's not the glue between view and controller and model, but it's like view and. So from a model, you don't get access to scope. So if you're so there's another part. So we are only 2 by 30. There's one more component that's coming, which completes this entire framework. Okay, so that's it. AngularJS service. See, in every application you have business logic, you have view stuff, and the third thing what you have, your utility functions, right? Calling your REST APIs, calling Yahoo weather or some, a lot of things. So where do you put all this logic? You don't put this in a controller. Again, there is a separation between the business logic and, so you use services. So what is it? I mean, why do you need one more component in here, right? So there's one core difference we need to understand. Service are singleton. Controllers are not singleton. So what does it mean? Services are initialized only once. On the booting up of the application, if you have 10 services, AngularJS will boot up all this once. What happens to the controller? Every time you switch between pages, the controllers get reinitialized. So what happens if I try to save? So okay, I have a page where I want to save a counter 1, 2, 3, 4. I went to the next page, came back. What happens? So where do I put this? Don't say root scope. You can, but it's not a good practice. Where do you put it? You create a service as a getter setter or something. You put it in the service. So you create a service called what? Counter service. Get count. So every time I get count. So every time count increases, what I will do? I'll call a getter. Setter and put it in there. Next time I come back, I'll call a getter. Get this way. If you can't save it in the controllers. And by now I'm sure you guys are confused. Right? Good. Fine. So that's basically services. Now AngularJS gives you two sets. One is services. There are built-in services. Angular guys expose it for you. So everything. Okay. Other thing is everything that starts with that dollar is what? Built-in things by AngularJS, right? So these are some of the services. So $HTTP. What does it do? It helps you. You don't need to do the low-level coding of XML HTTP here, right? If you have Ajax, if you have jQuery, you can use $.get and things like that. You don't have jQuery here. So what will you do? You'll end up writing XML HTTP that full new XML HTTP request object and all. But with this service, you just get this service. You say $HTTP.get. Everything is abstracted from you. Clear? Following me? Right. So for timeout, intervals, root scope, all this you have lot of services. So there are tons of services out there. You guys have to go to AngularJS site and get more details. I don't have enough time to walk you through all this. Okay, another interesting thing I like about AngularJS is now we have covered 3 important parts. What? View, model, and right? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell the difference between your services factory and providers?
Okay, so services factory.
Really confused.
Okay, so services factory and providers are 3 different ways of creating a service. And to be frank, I'm not very clear what the difference is, right? So services, it basically depends upon the way that object is returned to you, right? If you create, so I'll show you an example here. I used a factory. So I normally use factory. I've used services as well. So service. Okay, see if you see here, I forgot to tell this. See, this is how we initialize a service. Good, thanks for this question. So this is how we initialize a controller, right? With a controller. So Angular has another way of. This is how you initialize you create a service. The difference between using a factory versus there are 3 ways: factory, provider, and service, keywords. All these three gives you a service. It's used in different contexts. So providers, have seen people use it during testing for while for guessing some dummy things. Factory is you get back what you passed to it, something of that sort. So I mean, really don't get confused with this now. Even if you Google, you don't really find out. If you go to Google's doc, you will get immediately confused, right? If you go to some other blog, you will get more confused. Just don't worry about it. Use factory. It will. All these are singleton for that matter. Don't worry. It gives you the singleton behavior. The only difference is the kind of object it's returning back. I am also still trying to understand. Now I happen to use factory quite a lot. I never had to encounter a point where where I had to use a provider versus I use service also, right? So I probably will dig little more and answer this. So we have a blog. Perfomatix as a blog. So we just keep putting some of this. This is one thing we'll add up there, right? All right. So filters. Right. So what are filters? So all the main components are gone. So further down the line, what I'm trying to do is all fancy stuff we can do with AngularJS, right? So now it's going to be interesting. So every application has. Till now, what did you realize? What all the features they are giving? What is it suited for? What is it most suited for? Building a web application, a typical CRUD application, right? What is a CRUD application? Create, read, update, delete application. So that's what we all build most of the case. You create a user, you modify a user, you update a user, you delete a user. What are other things we do? Tell me, is there anything else we do? Unless you're developing a game or a GUI editor or something, what else we do in a typical application? Search is again get. So everything falls into one of these four categories, right? So 90% of the application in the world which is being developed falls into this categories, other than the games, things like that. So for such application, Angular, so all these features fits well for that. Correct. So filters, and in every application, what you encounter in the UI is what? I have a currency. Somebody enters 2000. I want to convert it and say $2,00, right? Depending upon my local. If it's US, I want to say dollar. If it's India, I want to do INR, whatever, the symbol. How do you do? How many lines of code you have to write? Just think from jQuery or JavaScript point of view. How many lines of code you have to write? Quite a bit. I mean, dollar, whatever, you need to start writing this, right? So there are a lot of filters you need to do in that case. How do you do it in AngularJS? Okay, so this is okay. This is so there are two types of filters. There are certain filters which Angular gives you by default, like in the same case of services. HTTP service, Angular give you. You can create your own services for your own needs, right? Filters also, there are certain filters which Angular gives, there are certain you have to create on your own. So I have created two out here. The first one, what it does is whatever I type in here, the first line is without any filter. So exactly it shows what it is. Second line is I reverse it and I do apply caps on top of it. Now see my HTML. Is there anything which says I'm doing all this thing? All I'm saying is what? This is this line, right? Reverse. Greeting is the ng model greeting is the value of whatever I'm entering here. This line here does the magic. I'll simply say to this greeting apply this filter called reverse. So as a developer, a UI developer, all he needs is okay, reverse, use this reverse. Behind the scene, what I did, I created a filter called reverse, which does it for me. That's the business logic I write. I mean, whatever logic I write, correct. So you can change it. Now, see the interesting part. Since there's binding already in there, so think about the applications or pages where you have to do the calculation. You select this service, 2 into 10 into, all those things will automatically change. You don't have to submit or anything, right? So this is right. All right. So okay. Now this is a filter which is predefined by AngularJS, which is So reverse is something I created by custom, right? I just created a name. See this one here. Currency is something which is available to you from AngularJS. So if you look here, I haven't written a single line of code to use it. I have nothing. This is my filter for reverse, right? See if I have anywhere which says dollar or anything. See, now what I'm trying to do is the charge for my today's talk is this, right? So Deepu just not. So yeah. So how does it happen? So the code for this is already built into AngularJS. So there are a lot of filters available out there which you can use. So 90% of your day-to-day needs in a web application development is taken care here. So things you need to custom do it, you have the facility to do that as well. Clear? Okay. So some of the filters are currency, lowercase, date, number, filter, order by, uppercase. See, all this is what you really need to worry about. Clear? Okay. Now the last, I think, last and the most interesting part of AngularJS. This is what made me like AngularJS the most. It's called directives. Directives is a way of teaching HTML new tricks. That's what you see if you start Googling, right? Start teaching HTML new tricks. You from the first part of this application itself, you started seeing directives. From where? The first thing I told you was a directive today. NGApp, right? NGApp was a directive. NG controller, NG. So these are directives which are provided to you by Angular libraries. You can create your own directives. What does it look like? It looks like an HTML tag, right? Am I right? For a developer or a UI guy, this looks like a HTML tag. There is no business logic whatsoever, right? So think about it. I want to create a tag and give to Hari, right? And I'll tell whichever application you build, I want to have the name of my company coming there. And I gave him some code. Typically what you'll do, you'll create a variable and assign some value to this variable as, Perfomatix Solutions Private Limited and all. You know how we do this? You know how, you want to see how we roll? And I have two requirements for it. One is I want to show the name of the company and I want to show the Google Maps, static map with the pin, right? And so I'm giving him a library. He just needs to use it. So I'll show you how much line of code it takes. There you go. All right. So see the directive called CName on top, right? There's a directive called CName. HTML doesn't know this. I am teaching HTML a new tag, directive called what? CName. What is that? What do you see here? Right? So wherever in my application, when I put a tag in HTML called CName, instead I can ask him to put my picture. So Liju image. So that's all it takes. Right? So this one. Imagine how many lines of code you would have to do this, right? Especially when you want to show so many static maps with different. If it's just one, it's okay. If you have to show a lot of static maps with at different locations, and you already know the lat long, what you will do? See, I created a directive called static gmap. And this also tells different ways of doing it, as an element, as a value, right? And the other one was right. So again, this is the problem with directives. There are like 25 different ways of doing it. Right? If I start talking about it, it gets really confusing. We won't get into the details. So I want to tell you, you can teach HTML a lot of tricks like this. So these two, see how clean my HTML is now. It's nothing, right? You can. So we created our own directives when we were doing an application for the chart. So the customer had a requirement. When you then come back, you need to show chart. What we did, we created a directive called chart directive, and we passed a value as pi versus bar versus. So the directive is chart, the value is that key is that. Then so once we created this, the developers, it was quite easy. So client says I need bar chart. Fine. Chart, put bar, you put the JSON whatever value is. How do you map the JSON? It's easy because ng model whatever value you give, backend when the API gives you the data immediately. So the most interesting thing is that in real time the chart keeps changing. Because why? Here there is a two-way binding happening, right? So when my data changes, so if you have a like fire chart, so if I set an interval of every 10 seconds, I want to read, the API reads every 10 seconds, this thing starts moving like this, right? Imagine how many lines of code you would have to write to get this done in a typical scenario, right? So that's what direct is. I'm not going to get into too much details of directives because it's I don't think it will be productive. You have to sit and learn. It will take a little time to learn directives because there are n number of ways of doing this. I can guarantee you will be confused. But don't stop learning this because this is the most powerful. And other thing is you can modularize this again. So you can package this and distribute it. You just send this library, whoever wants to use it can use it, right? Fine. I think that covers most of the things. There are a lot more I have in store, right? But I don't think 2 hours. I think this much of torture should be enough for a day. Right? We will plan another. I'll plan with Deepu for another session.
Okay. So actually, the intention of this session is just to help us to kickstart using AngularJS and understand some basic concepts. And if there is any questions, that is, if you have already started using it, if you have any questions, you can ask with him and.
Yeah, anytime you can call. So there are a few. You're telling Deepu? Okay, there are a few other things, right, beyond this technicalities of this. I told you in the beginning, there are this big obvious question that comes to me. Can I use this AngularJS for this application? Right? So that's a question you need to answer. Most of the time what happens in IT service companies, you do AngularJS because the client asked you to do. The client just want to explore AngularJS and say, hey, you know what, let's try this. And that's the same thing that happened to me. It was a big struts based application. It's a round trip application where they want to use AngularJS. So I didn't really know about this. I said, okay, let's try. And 1 week, 2 weeks down the line, realized, you know what, it's a mess, right? So you really need to understand where you can use, where you can't use. And there is no real thumb rule for this. So there are certain thumb rules like this. It fits most of the CRUD applications, right? What we're talking. So most of the applications you work on will fit this bill. The classic examples are Facebook, Gmails, right? Other one is single page applications. This is a very good fit for API first approach. What is API first approach? Sorry?
I mean, it understand any language. My backend.
No, API first is sort of an approach in where you develop the application with data in mind. You just build APIs. In this day and age where you have everything doing mobile and web, do you want to build a coupled application or decoupled application? You need to build a decoupled application because 99% of the time client would, or anyone, even if you have a company and a product, you would want to build a mobile interface on top of it. What would you do? If you're using .NET ASP, it's all tightly coupled, you're using the built-in templating, what do you do? You have no options. So what we do? You build APIs. Only thing you depend upon is what? Data. You call API, you get the data. Then you can build any number of things on top of it. So this is predominantly taking this service-oriented architecture. What I say is right. This is what is taking a lot of momentum now, right? And this works very well because AngularJS clearly separates from your server side and client side. You know what's one very big advantage of single page applications? Anyone? 2 chocolates for that guy. Who tells this? Yeah, I think there's performance is and the end result is performance. How do you achieve that?
I don't want to reload the entire document. So
no, it's not what I told till now. So it's different. No, so I'll tell you one thing. See, you can take your client code and put it in a CDN. Think about it. Did you get what I'm telling? Think about a typical application. Your server-side code, your JSP, everything is where in your Tomcat or your .NET server, whatever server it is. No, you know what? So first of all, you know what CDN is, right? content delivery networks. So I'll just quick recap. So I am sitting in India. So Facebook server is in US. Is it faster to get images from US or from Japan? Obviously Japan, right? So they have CDNs across the world. So once they are somebody updates, so your friend in US updates the image, you're actually not getting the data from US server. The point it gets updated, it is distributed across all the CDNs. But can you do it with this application logic? No. Your Tomcat server, yeah, you can have a couple of servers somewhere, but you cannot do a CDN per se. So your HTML, you can just take this HTML and put in all these CDNs across the world. Right. So what happens in mobile and also the application loads because your UI comes from Japan. Right. Usually it's Asia. There's one in Asia Pacific. We don't have it yet. So, so usually when you go to Amazon AWS and start setting up, they tell you which server you need. Usually pick one of the Asia APAC. So you say, okay, your image, the HTML comes from Japan. Your data would come from US. Right. So that gives you that additional boost allows big enterprises to do CDN. I mean, it's a little expensive, but that's how you do it. Clear? Make sense? Right. So other thing is at the same time when you need to know when to use AngularJS, you also need to know when not to use, right? I mean, this is something I have never tried, but people say, don't try to build games with this. Don't play games with AngularJS, right? So don't build. It's not the ideal for building games or applications which don't use all the features of AngularJS. See, you need to use the entire package. So if you're using AngularJS just for DOM manipulation, will you use AngularJS or jQuery? Use jQuery because jQuery was built for DOM manipulation, right? Why do you carry the other load of all this routing business? Clear? Like GUI editors and drag and drop things, which all I'm relating to what heavy UI things and non-SPA applications, which it really doesn't. So you have in a non-SPA application, you have 4 pages, like 4 JSPs, which loads 4 separate times. Each will have its own NG app, and you are not able to share your root scope across application. Will you be able to share root scope across a non-SPA application? No, because it gets destroyed because your browser reloads. What happens? Your entire DOM is destroyed. So you cannot store. See, that's the problem with this is one of the big issues I had with clients. They get a wrong behavior when they hit F5. Of course, you will get a wrong behavior when you get F5 because what happens? All my root scope, everything is destroyed. My service singletons are destroyed. The client says, suddenly I'm seeing all curly braces now, nothing else. So I say, okay, you cannot. You're not supposed to do F5. Why do you need to do F5? Right? So if you want to refresh, you'll provide a refresh button, but. And two-way binding helps you in that sense. So the data will be up to date. Right. Okay. So I think that we get too close to that, right? So what next for me? What next is immediately get out of this place and go home. But beyond that, if people who wants to learn AngularJS, what next? So first thing first, learn JavaScript. This is a pretty good book. It's free. You can download this. Eloquent JavaScript. So get hold of that. Learn the first 8 or 9 chapters, and you should be good to go. Right? There are some examples you can use that. Second one is read. That's the document from AngularJS. Their own official document. Read this. Trust me, you will be confused. Right? That's fine. Be confused. That's okay. Right? So I mean, first stage. I mean, at least now you have a concept. So probably you get to know what directives are, dependencies or whatever. So then you try doing the tutorial. They have a tutorial. It's very good tutorial. So once you get through the tutorial, if you can survive the tutorial, I can guarantee you will be good. Right? So this is your path from novice to ninja. Then this is this guy called Egghead.io. This site. So it used to be free. The entire documentation used to be free, but now they have started charging. But whatever documents, so it's like bit-size videos, like 2-minute, 3-minute videos. It's very good. So you can. There are certain things which are still free in there, or certain things which you need to pay. I would say it's worth paying. It's not very expensive, but like maybe what, $10, $15 or something. Okay, what next? Angular 2.0. This has been a big controversy now. There is this event called NG Europe, which just happened last week, and they announced the plan. So currently we are at Angular 1.3, right? One of the biggest change in Angular 1.3, they stopped support for IE8, right? So with that, they don't have to do some lot of fallback mechanism. They can avoid a lot of fallback mechanisms and all. So IE8 is no more supported by Angular 1.3. Now Angular 2.0 is a, so I'm not going to explain what Angular 2.0 is, just a spec. It would be out maybe in another 10 months down the line, nobody knows. Mishko, they announce what it is, what you have in stock. It's a dramatic change from what you have in 1.3 versus 2.0. There is no more controllers. There are a lot of things they have removed. So the community is now like really angry about this. Even I am worried. What if my client wants to migrate from? I cannot migrate from 1.3 to 2. I can do from 1.2 to 1.3. I'm not really. So this is just an idea they have thrown out there. So it might change. So I hope things will get cleaner in that sense. Like there are 25 different ways of doing a directive, 3 different ways of doing service. I really don't want that much of complexity in the system, right? I just would need one clean way of doing it. There are certain, these are the things probably they can avoid, and performance-wise, there are a lot of improvements they can do. So there are certain tools, Yeoman and Batarang. So Yeoman is a wonderful tool. It's a build scaffold. It does 3 things: scaffolding, testing, and building for you. So what is scaffolding? Scaffolding is like structuring your app. Do you have any idea what the structure of an AngularJS app should be like? If it's a JavaScript application, you have a web. Java application, I'm sorry, I'm going back to Java. Pardon me for that, but you have this web.inf. These are all standard. There's nothing like that for AngularJS. So it's up to the whims and fancies of a developer to do what it. But when you use a scaffolding tool, Google or Angular team has given you a standard structure, so you can use that. So it gives you a standard structure. How do you want to do that, right? So it's again, each of these topics, like directives, I can talk for 1 hour, service another hour, Yeoman maybe 2 hours with the demo, right? Batarang I will show you. Batarang is a Chrome plugin. Oh, I can't show it here. Can we connect? Yeah, so I mean, that's okay. I mean, you can try Batarang. It's a Chrome plugin. It's only for Chrome by Angular team, which will help you debug. That console, which the debug console, right? So you get one more tab called Angular. It's very interesting. So all the dependencies, it's quite fancy, right? If you want to test it, just download Batarang. Go to our site, Perfomatix, because even our website we build using AngularJS. So that was, we were joking, we might rename ourselves to NG Perfomatix. So, but but still, so go to our website. You can see the Angular tab. If you include Batarang, just see, you can see a lot of funny stuff happening there, right? What next? Yeah, there's one. So I don't know when we should go to the demo. I mean, there's. We are running really short of time. Demo is one big application where I've used directives and things like that. I can't run it here. I can show the application. I can quickly show the application. Hari, can you just take that application? So there's one obvious question that comes. Okay, okay. So one question that comes up is, will Angular work for mobile? All right. Go ahead. So I mean, will Angular work for? Correct. But is it recommended?
Not recommended for a big application, just for.
Not PhoneGap. Using AngularJS for a PhoneGap application.
We can use in a middle-level applications.
See, the problem with this, these guys developed this as a web application framework. It was very clear when they started. It's a web application framework. Now, what are the few things you need? So we deal with a lot of mobility things, and we do a lot of PhoneGap related applications. So, and we extensively use AngularJS for that, right? But not in this form, right? So see, the problem with AngularJS is, it is, like I said, it was designed for web. Then what are the few significant things you need in a mobile framework? How many of you have used jQuery mobile? Anyone? jQuery mobile? Okay. So jQuery mobile is a mobile framework on top of jQuery. I hated it so much. It's like clunky, heavy framework. right? When I started using it, I really wanted to see some other framework come along. So because it was not a mobile optimized lightweight framework, it was this big jQuery, and then they added a lot of stuff on top of it. Now, what makes jQuery mobile different from jQuery? It has slide, touch. It supports multiple touch. So these are certain things you need to have in a framework, a mobile framework. Respective, right? A mobile user doesn't really know. He's not asking while downloading, this is a hybrid app or a native app. An end user doesn't really worry with how you build it. He wants that experience of seamlessness, right? He wants the touch to work perfectly. Now, you know what the big problem with touch in browsers are? So I can talk about mobile for another 2 hours, but I'll just tell you some interesting facts while we are setting it up. You know, see, browsers has this 300 millisecond click delay. Have you heard about it? So if you click fast twice, if the 2 clicks are within 300 milliseconds, only one will get registered, right? Okay, so what is the big problem about that? See, the browsers what you see in mobile are a lighter version or a subset of your mobile browsers. Safari and Safari Mobile, Chrome Mobile, whatever. They also have this problem. So it's not like clicking a mouse. When you play a game, you really need to do it within 300 milliseconds. What will you do? So the user experience of the nature, so subconsciously the nature of a user changed when started playing with mobile. So they started clicking, tapping, and all. So 2 clicks. This doesn't take 300 milliseconds, right? So why maybe if you have web text thing, so you have to take that out of the picture. So browsers doesn't do it. So there are like JavaScript libraries called fastclick.js. You just add this. That library takes away 300 milliseconds delay from your thing. Now, in the future, they have decided they are not going to have 300 milliseconds anymore. But these are small but significant things that are part of mobile application framework you need to consider. So Angular has ng touch, ng swipe, which they recently added, right? Ng tab, but I don't think they have multiple. Like, see, Samsung or Apple supports 3 finger, 4 finger. Okay, so the problem is like certain newer framework supports multiple, like 5 finger, 4 finger, even you can probably next time you can put a leg also. But like multi gesture, it all supports. But browsers can't do that. Sorry, AngularJS is not built for that. But don't worry, there's always smart people, right? So there is this company called Ionic Framework. Ionic. There are 2 guys called Ionic and Onsen, 2 companies. They took AngularJS and converted it into a mobile framework, right? But it comes with the load of AngularJS, the full load. But I'm mighty impressed with it. We built 3 or 4 applications already with Ionic and Onsen, and with the proper UI design and all. There was no way for the clients to figure out it was. So you have this slider. See, I can tell you the features they're providing. Pull to refresh is now possible in web. You know what pull to refresh is like? Facebook has this, right? When you pull down the refresh app, think how can you do it in mobile, right? So these guys, so check it out, Ionic framework. But the problem is if you want to start using it, you need to know Angular a bit. Ionic and Onsen, I would recommend Ionic because they have a huge community support. Right, so that is Angular and mobile. Now, I've been proponent of AngularJS all this while, right? I'm waiting for that one question. What are the disadvantages of AngularJS? I didn't get that question yet. So, what are the disadvantages of AngularJS? All the disadvantages that come as part of an SPA is there in AngularJS. So SPAs have its own disadvantages. That's you can't avoid that, right? Now, security, right? Security, I mean, no framework provides it. But if you have a server-side application, you are more secure. You have more control. Here, you don't have that kind of a control.
You can see the whole source code with any plugins.
You see the business logic, but yeah, I mean, that's okay. But that I can somehow control, right? My source code, maybe you do amplify. There are files, but still, people who want to hack it can hack it. But my source code is not going to impact me as much my data as my data or somebody getting into the server. So I have to build APIs which are quite secure. I'll tell you a classic scenario. You are into some, let's say, banking site. You are inactive for, you're in a page and then you went out for something, tea or something. You came back. By the time the server might have timed out, right? Because there's an inactivity timeout set in the server and server might have timed out. The next 2-3 things I'm going to do on the screen has nothing to do with server. Because there are 3 screens. I'm filling my details. I fill like 10 things. I click next. Next is not going to server. More details. Third click is again more details. So user is sitting there and typing all this while. All this while I'm not going to what? The server. Right. And finally I submit. Bam, I get what? 403. Security error. You are not authorized. Or you have timeout. Will this happen in a server side? Because I mean, there you the page you already. If timeout happened, I can push something saying, hey, I can push a message. Right? How will you recover? How will you come out of this problem? There is no site again. This is the problem. There is no built-in support. How do you come out of this problem? So we had to hack around, see how people have done. So what I have done is, for every time I change, these things are called what? Partials, right? So every time I change around the page, I simply send a request to server. I created a simple API called is logged in. It's very lightweight, right? So every time even if I'm moving between pages in the server client side, I simply send one saying is logged in, is logged in. If is logged in comes back with an error, I can immediately show it. I mean, this is the only way I know. Maybe I'm wrong with this approach, but this is how I could figure out. And Angular has some support in. Angular provides things called interceptors. It's called HTTP interceptors. Anytime there is an HTTP call, it's like the listener comes in. Broadcast listeners are there. So you can create your own broadcast. What is broadcast listeners? Radios, like radio station broadcast. Whoever has that radio tuned in listens, right? I don't have to ask for anything. I just need to tune into that frequency. I get it, right? So there are these listeners there, HTTP listeners. Any single time I do a HTTP call, right? What happens? This interceptor, it only goes through this interceptor. Or even if I'm changing the partial, anytime something happens with your URL, it goes through this interceptor. So first thing I'll do is if it gets to the interceptor, I'll fire a server call to see if I'm logged in or not. All right. So I mean, there are different ways of doing it. So these are one of the disadvantages, but this is not just for AngularJS, it's SPAs. Other thing I would say is the learning curve. And I haven't seen any banking applications, or I haven't seen someone doing a banking application with this, but I've seen amazing applications done for CRUD applications, like CRUD applications. Virgin USA, their ticket booking site is wonderful, amazing. So it's not a framework that one size fits all thing, right? So it's more like you just need to sit and think like, where should I, what works. Hari? Can you go log in? Hari? All right. So this is one of the apps we have done. Hari, can you do one thing? Can you go to?
So we are just going to see some practical applications of both these. What we have learned have been used, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So under presentation one. Right. So it's okay. This is one of the application we built. It's like how many partials are there, Hari? I think there are.
Actually, there are more than some 20 partials.
30 partials are there in this application. So we'll. I think you can. Okay. Oops. How will you? Okay, you have to. How will you reduce the size? Okay. All right. Okay. So fine. So see, a couple of things I want to tell is, okay, I'm going to sit here. So a couple of things I want to tell is, see, what you see on the top, that thing is the index.html here, right? That frame. So this is a single page application. The black thing on the top, on the left side, is the index.html. Everything inside that are partials. So the logic we have done is, if you log in, if login is successful, immediately replace, put this dashboard in the index.html. So if you look at my index.html, it will be only this much, like lot of script tags, no HTML code. Right? There is something called ngView, again Angular directive. So if when Angular intercepts ngView, it knows that it's like an indication saying that, you know what, let's this is time I have to replace something here. This is like a placeholder. ngView, think about like a placeholder. So then Angular really knows, okay, I know I have to replace something here. Now how do I replace? Angular has built-in routing. Routing says like, if this URL / this, bring this page. So what we have done is, if login is a success, I will go to /dashboard. Sorry, /dashboard.html. So I have a /dashboard.html kept somewhere else. It will automatically take this, put this instead of the ngView. So if you look at my code, you won't see one big HTML. You see one index.html and partials. But if you see the source of this, it's all in one. Right. This is how you build a single page application. So a couple of other things to note is, note this one. Can you scroll up? Harry, can you scroll up? Two finger. All right. So this chart, this is what I was telling, right? This is a directive. If you look at it, it's just a directive. So across this application, we have reports where I have to use a lot of charts. Guess what? We created a directive. There are a lot of directives we have to modify it. If you go to the top, we do a type there, right? So this is a type forward. This is also, we created a directive for this. So whichever text box, input box, not text box, whichever input box you want to have type forward, you put this directive in there. Bam. Just tell which source you need. Right? But it's easier said than done. But yeah, it's an evolution of what we did over some time. So we have, and this application also supports like 5 or 6 roles. You know, like role-based support is there. So an admin can log in, he can see these many tabs on the side, right? Only an admin can see. So how do you control that in a single page application, right? I control it at the login, right? And then you have to be very careful. Somebody can hack into and to the console and then figure out the request. But that kind of security has to be built on my server side, right? I have security built on the server side. So I'll check who has logged in first. If this guy has privilege to this API, see, this is another critical thing. Everything here is tied to what? One API. It's either a get, post, put, delete, right? CRUD, whatever. So somebody is trying to do a delete. I can check if this logged in user has access to that on the server side. So I'm safe in that sense, right? So you do be this works very well for API first applications. Clear? Yeah.
Is there any way to secure the API calls? I mean, anybody can see the source code, right, and get the API call, and he can place it somewhere in his site, or he can work around.
But you need to have. So we use Spring MVC based APIs, or we can use Jersey. So I'm going back to Java, right? So there are API frameworks, right, which has security built into it. So what you do is you will divide your APIs into secure APIs and non-secure APIs. So it's very counterintuitive. What is a non-secure API for every application? Login API is non-secure, because you don't need to log in. If you say that I need to log in to get login API, then right, user registration will be always non-secure API, right? So you will divide your app, or about me, your FAQs are probably non-secure APIs. To an extent, search is also non-secure, because I don't worry people searching for stuff. I'm worried about DCU, right? R, I'm fine. I mean, what's the worst they can do? Just read, unless it's a sensitive data. Correct. So again, in the server side, so we are totally deviating the subject. So on the server side, every framework, .NET, Java, whatever, has its own built-in security mechanisms. So we leverage one of those security mechanisms where if this user is logged in, he can access only these kind of. So if somebody want to bypass that, they have to crack into the server. And
Angular doesn't have that built-in capability, right?
no, the Angular is again a client side. They can't do anything about it. So we have to manage that. The other way of doing it is we also send secure tokens on the header, which has a set expiry time, right? So this is what the application I wanted to show. So are you guys fine for another 5 minutes, or should we wrap up now? 5 minutes? All right, I'll show you something. Can you go to the source code? Right? Okay.
Excuse me. Hello.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
How the routing is working in Angular?
Okay, so
is it routing to the controller, or I'm not?
Okay, I mean, I actually skipped it, so I'll just show it right now. That's what I was about to do. So
yeah.
So there is not a routing module like that. So but there are mechanisms. Hari, can you take me to the? Yeah, here you go. So you are reading my mind. I was about to do this. So all right. So this is how we do it. So there is a service available from Angular called route provider, right? Which says when my whatever the URL somebody is trying to hit is /login, go to this folder, which is a folder I named like partials, pull up login.html, right? Then I go to this page. So what is the difference between this and this? Come on guys, it's obvious, it's written there. Right, see, the first one is non-secure, second one is secure. See, this is not a feature built in by AngularJS. This is something we had to crack. Right, so this is logged in is a function we created, check logged in and all this. So only if this is successful, you will proceed. Even if somebody cracks this, my server will catch it. So don't build applications which if you can't secure your APIs. So what's the worst? I mean, another thing is somebody is a man, like bombards your server with, but those things you can control, by settings and all. But that's okay. Clear? So this is how routing happens. So if you use this, whatever we have created here, only thing you have to do is, there is some JavaScript files you have to include, and just add this. Wherever you add this, those become secure and others become non-secure pages. So again, your application has secure pages and non-secure pages. Clear?
So using this, I can implement multi-page application because I see this partial / different page, HTML pages. So can I implement different?
No, but you have to go. So you have to go to the server to get that page. Yes, so you don't have the page with you. Right? So this is not your complete localhost :URL. Don't get confused.
Okay.
This is not your localhost :URL. This is within Angular. So you know about the hashtag?
Yes.
Harry, can you go to perfomatix.com, please? See, when I hit perfomatix.com, first thing that happens, see that hash home came up, right? So what we are talking, this slash is whatever is beyond this hashtag. It's not your root URL per se. It's your hashtag. So if I go to products, right? So changes. So that's the only thing that changes. It's not your local host that path to the server that changes. This is within that. This is called hashtag. The browsers now support this. There are some challenges that comes with this. What is it? Can somebody tell what are the challenge that comes with this using this? It's no.
How do you handle the search engine requests?
SEO is one problem that is yet to be solved from SEOs. AngularJS applications, for that matter, SPA applications really doesn't support SEOs.
So you need to run.
So where is the sound coming?
Here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was looking at.
So you need to run 2 versions of the application such that you need to support the SEO also.
No, SEO. See, where do you need really SEOs? Have a Facebook. Right. So any SPA applications really doesn't support SPAs, and again it comes down to the crawlers of Google, or how does it work? Anything that comes with JavaScript, loaded by JavaScripts, are not supported.
So where does Perfomatix.com stand on SCRP?
Yeah, so we are. So this is one example where we are trying to implement this. So we are getting high, and one thing we have is we are other SEO things like our names are unique, right? So and we are using tags like AngularJS. People looking for Ionic. So we have very specific SEO targets. Like I'm not really looking for everyone in Trivandrum to figure out Perfomatix. I'm looking for clients searching for Ionic. Okay. Or people looking for certain things, right? So that is my target customer. So my SEO is designed around that. Plus, we are using Google AdWords and Facebook. So it depends on client to client. How do you want to figure it?
We can do SEO for AngularJS. As well, there is a site for SEO for Ajax.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay. That's in that side we can do SEO for Angular applications.
Okay, good. So I mean, it's been a while since we looked into it. So I mean, one of the basic complaints everyone says is for SPAs, not just for AngularJS. SPAs. So thanks for that information. So we'll look into it. So what?
For Ajax.
SEO for Ajax. Yeah. Okay, thanks. We'll look into that. So I was asking a question before this. What was that question? Oh yeah. So how do you manage history? Windows.history. Right. Windows.history is a native. When you hit back, right? Initially this was a problem. Now it supports hash also. Hashtags can also be supported. So managing history, SEOs. Other thing is deep linking, like deep bookmarking. That's so if my customer wants to bookmark one page, it's with hash. So but with this browser also started supporting this. I'm not a full expert on this SEO area, and so I mean this is from my limited knowledge. But yeah, SEOs. Thanks. We'll look into that. I had someone from there asking.
It's not a technical question actually. So I just in your homepage I just see winner of AT&T hackathon or something. So I just want to interested about the product.
Oh no, this is one of the hackathons. Sorry, I mean I don't want to hijack this session for branding myself. So this is hackathon we participated. It's not here in US.
So I just want to know what was the product you built.
That is thing called the AT&T Uverse. That's a set-top box which won't work here. AT&T has this set-top box through which a mobile app. You can have a mobile application that pair to a set-top box.
Okay.
Right. So what we built was a game.
Okay.
Right. So the game is called Sports Square, whatever that thing is. So you can invite friends from your mobile. Whatever you're doing will come on this TV, and whoever is tied to this set-top box can have part of the screen. 30% of the screen you can have a mobile app running. So just let's take for example IPL is going. You have a mobile app and you want to start betting. Cool, right? You don't have to look into your phone. So all the friends who have been invited will start seeing this. So that's it's a totally separate thing. I mean, call me or I'll tell you. I don't want to hijack this session. Yeah, that's.
Hi. And we can also remove the hash from the URL by enabling HTML5 from root.
No, but for Angular to identify the routes.
That's we have given a.
Oh, this is for implementing SEO.
No, we can remove the hash.
Hey, you can remove the hash.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think one of the problem that comes with this route. I think routing you need. I mean, as far as I know, for the routing the application, right? Hari?
Okay, you can take bookanyone.com. In that site, we have done the bookanyone.com.
Can I go there, please?
Anyone. .com.
Okay. Can you do okay, right click? Okay, search it.
If you go through the static pages, there will be no hash like that.
Okay. 1 second. So this is the Batarang. I use this opportunity to show Batarang as well. Okay, so this is an AngularJS application for that matter, right? Okay, I need to look into it. So how we can remove wherever we have done, and also I think it will recognize the slash.
The prefix can be null. We are using hash for that.
Okay.
We have to.
But what if I want to pass parameters? Like parameter.
It will be changed by Angular itself.
Angular itself will change it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we enable
Is there a,
HTML5 to true.
Oh, okay. But will it support IE in that sense?
Yeah.
In that case, IE support.
In our browsers.
Okay. Good. So this is, I'll show you Batarang. All right. One of the interesting features is this. This is what I like. So, okay. See, this shows all the dependencies you have in here. So, why is this slow? See. So each of these dependencies, review, reply, directive. Maybe you have returned it. I don't know. You might be familiar with all these directives, right? This is dependent on exception and injector. So all this, So this is a pretty good tool to debug. I think they are stopping support for this beyond 1.2. I think, if I'm wrong, right? Right. I think should be right. So I think that's it from me. You have any questions? Probably, if you have any questions, send a mail at liju@perfomatix.com. Right. I'll be more than happy to. So watch out for our blogs. We'll write. We'll just adding some stuff in there. Right. Thanks for your time. I'm really excited that a lot of people here is interested and stayed along with me all this while. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Liju, for that awesome session. And so, Suri, do you want to share something about?
Thanks, Liju. I just came here to get an introduction to AngularJS, and I think it was a terrific session for someone. I consider myself as a techie, but being outside of the actual coding part for quite some time now. But it took me back, and I can see that how much is there that I have missed over many years. I like the 10 years we talked about, but I missed the 10 years. So, okay. Okay.
The advantage of working with the TCS or Infosys. So there you get this opportunity to see the latest things happening. They're like real hardcore architects, techies who just keep playing with this. So yeah, that's when how I got introduced to this. And I'll tell you, this very interesting thing is Node.js. Don't let it go away. It's very interesting. There are a lot of things happening. I can't keep track of it. So Node.js, Go. I don't know how many of you know about Go. There's things coming out. These are all server-side things. There's things coming out like Dart, Polymer. Dart I can talk about in half an hour. Polymer is very interesting. Maybe I'll give you one more minute. Polymer is an extension of directives. So I told about directives, right? So so Polymer is like directives. So it lets you package everything, and so it's reusable directives for any framework. Directives work only for AngularJS. What if I can have it work across?
This Polymer extract and everything is different actually. Kind of development is happening. So yeah, explain.
With that same concept, right? You get a Google Maps as a Polymer, right? So yeah, that is how I try to come up. That's a new thing coming out called web components.
Well, what really interests me is you still have the passion. I can see the passion coming out of you when you're talking technology. In spite of being a CEO of a company, and it's very easy to get detached from technology and take care of other things. But I can see that technology is your stronghold.
No, I actually put in, thanks for that, but I actually put in all the static code yesterday. I was telling Deepu I don't have any live code because for the last 7-8 months I'm not doing anything. So Deepu asked me, is there any live code? I said, no, I don't have any. And then that's the last slide I sent him. So yesterday a new joinee came. So I was just trying out with this guy, whether I can teach this guy with this. So I went through four slides and he's like, oh. So I realized, no, it's not working out. So yesterday night, I started JS Fiddle and created all those. So I was a little rusty, but I came through that.
Okay. So that's one of my goals also, to see if I can learn something and take it back to my company, to the new joinees. But I see that some of my new joinees come here, so most likely I'll be talking to them and see if they can teach me something from this. So I just had one question regarding that. You mentioned that version 2, it's going to be a complete revamp, rewrite of this. What is it going to do to the the AngularJS community, or the corporates or people who are jumping into the Angular bandwagon right now?
It's the sense. I mean, it's just been a week. I follow a lot of blogs and AngularJS community. The sense I get is it's equally spread. Previously, it was 80% of the people okay for AngularJS. Now it's like 50% of people shouting, crying, making noise. 50% supports, because see, the original philosophy of AngularJS was UI developer should be able to do all these things, not a. But AngularJS becomes such a complex thing. A UI developer cannot do this now, right? So so they're trying to align to that philosophy of. I haven't read through the entire. So it's just what they didn't even release a spec. They released a deck with no details. It's there in the site for SharePoint. If you check Angular 2.0, there's a deck. It says RIP controller, RIP. There are a bunch of things it says, but there's no specs out. So probably seeing the response of the community. See, I am concerned because by the time 2.0 comes, I will be at 1.8. And I don't know if I can migrate from 1.8.
That's the concern, right? I mean, what happens to all the code base if there's no backward compatibility and all those things? That's
the good thing is Google won't drop support. So I mean, this is one reason people jump into this bandwagon so easily. Even though I haven't done Ember.js or thing, but Ember.js sounds to be very good, right? But I was hesitant to jump that ship. Was what happens tomorrow if Ember.js say, what, we are done with this. But here you have Google. If not this guy, somebody else will do it. So.
Okay. Anyway, thanks, Liju, and thanks, Deepu, for hosting all of us. It was a great coffee. Thanks.
Thanks, Suri.
Thanks.
So, Coffee at DBG is surely a platform for us to identify these type of gems in our community, and to know each other, and also for making friends who are working on the same platform. So. It is also time for networking. That is, you can just talk to each other, get introduced, and also normally we will have a session where you can ask real-world questions. That is the problems that you are facing in your projects, and get answer for that. And maybe that is just as he said, that is somebody in this community should be able to answer that question. Okay, it is just a platform to share knowledge and grow. And also another stuff is, whenever we have this session, there will be some products the guys in our community build, and this is a platform where they showcase their product. So we have one entrepreneur here. So his name is Abhiram. He launched an application called Live to Eat.
Hi everyone. First of all, let me congratulate Mr. Aju for a very passionate and a very wonderful talk. It was a very informative one. Let me introduce myself. I am Aviram, and I'm co-founder and co-founder of a last mile delivery company named D for Delivery. We have been delivering for food, grocery, medicine, vegetables, and everything throughout the city, from anywhere to any location throughout the city. And it is like, it was a dream for me to find a startup, and it is recently that we have launched a service named Live to Eat. I'm not taking, you have been very much keen on waiting, hearing a wonderful session. I'm not taking much of your time. I just want to answer 3 questions on, I just want to mention 3 questions on Live to Eat. Why Live to Eat? Live to Eat is very much a unique solution which solves the entire problem of lunch. How many love their food over here? I guess all love their food over here, I guess. This is a wonderful experience, a one-stop experience for every food lovers in the Technopark. Right now, we are open to the Technopark campus, and we are serving entirely to all the buildings inside Technopark. And the next is how live to it. Live to it operates in simple 3 steps. It is like the ordering for tomorrow starts today at 3 p.m. and closes at 11 a.m. You can order with about 10 or 400 or any number of people within a span of about maybe I can say a 5 or 10 minutes based on your connectivity. We have a platform www.live2eat.in. That's a website and an Android application by the same name named Live2Eat, by which you can order. This is a one-stop solution exactly for your team lunches as well as your personal. It is like many people have been roving around the city for finding the best food from where you can get it. Even though we are same platform, say we follow the same model as Dabbawala, the uniqueness that we provide is that we serve in a different way. We have the menu for the entire day, all the days the menu will be changing. Likewise, it is that we'll be having about 20 to 25 items every day. That will be changing based on the customer review. And also we have a chef that is a curator. He curates the menu and prepares it for us. So in every day, it changes, the menu changes such that you'll not be in a boredom of having the same menu. So it is a very, very, very good solution for the entire office going people as well as for any team lunches. I can proudly say that Live2Eat is the only product in India where you can offer, you can get the lunch or food in just a press of a button. It makes the life very much simpler for ordering your lunches. So, and what is the uniqueness, as I've already mentioned, the people are the menu all the day throughout changes every day, and that makes the productivity of the people increasing, as well as the you can never board of the lunches however you have. So we are now in a open beta testing to entire Technopack people, and right now we are offering about nearly about 12 restaurants and many individual vendors throughout the city. And we'll be right now opening for many homely meals as well. For example, you will not be there are many types of people working over here from different states, so you don't need to wander right now in throughout the city for the best meal for offering in it. So the Live2Eat, as I can say, is a one-stop solution for your office going, for all the office going lunches, for your team lunches and your business lunches. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinav. Okay, so I would like to invite Suri to hand over a memento. Please, Liju. And hopefully we will have more sessions of Liju in Technopark. Okay. So we also have a Facebook group called Techno Geeks, where we used to communicate together and discuss about what the next session should be of. And also all the events, the slides will be available on that Facebook group, as well as the videos are recorded. Since it was a live event, we had already recorded the complete video. If you want to replay and listen to something, you can just go there and replay it. Can you just? Okay. And thanks a lot for showing up, and I think we can call for the day. Okay. Thank you.